Great. Well, thank you everyone for coming today. My name is Jim Walker. I'm one of the directors here at Walk 21. We're an international charity working across the world to improve walkability, working with policymakers and project people, delivering initiatives on the ground to really improve the walking experience for people wherever they may be. This particular series is where we're grateful to the Volvo Research Education Foundation, VREF, who've helped us and inspired us really to think about how the processes of developing a walking policy can sometimes be, well, there's sometimes barriers, sometimes things that you learn along the way that might be helpful to other countries and places. So what we're actually asking today is we're focusing in on Norway. And we've got two people who have kindly offered to help answer some questions and give us some insights into the Norwegian walking policy. And we're particularly pleased to welcome Guro Berge, who was there right from the beginning. And I would say probably wrote the first walking policy in the world. So this is going to be really quite insightful, I think, to hear your experience of that. And I do appreciate that you've taken time out from your new job that is now not so much involved in the walking policy side of things, but I think, as you said, more involved in the transport world still, I think, but also in education and promotion of policies and papers and things. So we'll get on to that in a second. But I guess your successor is Liv, and Liv Ovstedal is with us as well today from the Norwegian government. And she's going to sort of explain what's been happening over what has actually been 10 years, I guess, of walking policy in Norway. And we'd be really interested in your insights to help others, particularly. As I say, it's part of a series. We've got about an hour, and we've invited people to join in if they want to. If you are part of this session, feel free to turn your cameras off. I mean, it's lovely to see you, but if you want to, you can stay on and be friendly if you wish. But if you've got comments that you want as you go, please put them in the chat, and we'll try and have a bit of time at the end to ask some questions if we can as we go. As I say, this is an insight into the Norway situation. And let's maybe just get started. If you don't mind, Guro, can you tell us your role in this? How did all this get started? It was, I think, I've seen documents going back to 2012. I mean, that was definitely the first in the world. What actually happened in Norway, and why was the policy started?
Well, we started the work in 2010, I think it was, and the assignment of the developing of a national strategy was given from the Norwegian Public Road Administration from the Ministry of Transport through what we call a white paper. That was in 2009, and it was part of the National Transport Plan for Norway, and it was also followed up with the instruction from the Ministry of Transport to the National Road Administration to make this national walking strategy. So we were of course very happy about this, and we before the strategy we had a lot of initiatives with walking. We had, for instance, a big walking conference in Berge in 2005. And we also made what we call the Book of Walking. The Book of Walking. It was
What's the Book of Walking then? What's that for? Is that for engineers or is it for the community?
No, it's for planners. It's an inspiring book with good lots of pictures and good quotation from different philosophers and everything about walking.
Oh, really? Is that still available? Is it online anywhere?
It's not online, unfortunately. I have it here. It's very nice. You can see it.
That would be great. Okay, so inspirational quotes in there, and that, yeah. And so this idea that ministers actually came up with the idea of a plan. Was it theirs, or was it you giving them a suggestion that this is something that they might want to do? How did that really work?
Now we of course lobbied along for many years to make the ministry accept making a walking strategy. So it was not their idea, it was our idea actually. But they were willing, and we were appreciated. We appreciated that, of course. So we had a mandate. You might be interested to know. It was to develop a national walking strategy and to set up also national targets up to 2023 this year actually. So this will be a nice year of seeing how far we got.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and also to make an evaluation system and so on. So it's that was the mandate we had.
And what was your inspiration then to sort of get the ministers to speak for it? I mean, you talked about the philosophical quotes and this guide. It was you're an architect or you're a planner? How does that work? And
I'm a sociologist.
Sociologist. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And so you're a people person. Is that would that be fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say. I think it's like travel behavior and mobility is a very interesting part of telling how people are living. It's an indicator of people's everyday, an organization of their everyday life. So that's why I'm interested in this. And of course, also,
it's interesting you say that. Yeah. That's exactly the reason why we set up Walk 21. We called walking was the best indicator of a livable place, so we're totally on the same page for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So also walking is very social. It's the close intermediate between people, and it's very important.
So did you sort of take those principles about sort of social side of things? Was that sort of guiding the policy? I know you were working in the roads department at the time, so how did a sociologist sort of influence a roads department and a transport plan?
Oh, it's important to have a socialist in everything, especially in planning, and to see the structure of what influencing people's everyday life. And of course, it was the environment and climate that was one of the strategy justifications, and also this inclusive society that we have to have more welfare for everybody, and road safety, of course, and also urban environment and communities, more vibrant cities and safer communities. And then it comes to health and economy also.
I do think that in many ways you created a narrative that I think lots of other people have followed. There was a whole language which was developing around those years about just putting words like vibrancy, the economic side of things. I think a lot of people understood the health arguments, but as you say, to sort of link in with environment and climate from an early point, I think you were quite ahead of your time there. And there were departments for these things, were there? Or, I know the strategy is officially owned by the Roads Authority part. How do they link with all these other departments? How does that work?
I think that the Public Road Administration at that time was quite ahead of their time, actually. They were open for many initiatives, and they were, they were willing to use time and money on this. So I think it's maybe also they had more money than they have today, and I think the people, the walking people have more difficult times now than they maybe had that time in planning, but not in maybe in real life. We have come quite a long way from into a better society now, I think.
Yes, yeah, a long way in the policy side, certainly. And so you crafted this document that I guess you were working multidisciplinary, working with different departments to create this document. Did you write it yourself, or did you get consultants in? How did it work?
Oh no, I did not write it myself. This was a group project. We established a working group. Me as a socialist was leading the group, and we had the secretary. She was an architect, And we also had the representatives from each of the regions in the Norwegian Public Road Administration. At that time we had 5 regions. And we also had 3 representatives from the Norwegian Association of Regional and Local Authorities. And we also had the Ministry of Health with us, with 1 person. And we also had people from the Public Road Administration responsible for traffic safety, universal design, traffic behavior, and urban planning. So this was a group. And I can tell you a little of the work we did, because at that time we didn't know all about walking, so of course. So we had seminars and group discussions and workshops in this group. We traveled around in Norway, and we looked at the different places and different problem areas and so on. And we also had good lectures for each other, because everyone in the group had some speciality that they could talk to the other and learn to the others. And we also wrote different work documents on subjects like laws and guidance and quality of places, street environments, and children, for instance, and campaigns and travel behavior. So we had a quite good process in the beginning to come on the same level of knowledge.
And did that take some time? How long did it take to actually write that document then? You mentioned 2009, and then you got this sort of commitment in 2010. Was it 4 years? It took 4 years until that 2014 policy document?
No, it took 15 months. So It was finished, the document was finished in 2012. And then it was ratified from the Transport Ministry in 2013, I think, as part of the public transport plan. Not the national transport plan. So we used.
Yes, its relationship to that document. Then there is this transport plan already. The document sits within it, or is it like a daughter document? Is that how it's sort of described, or how does it connect?
Yeah, it's a daughter document, and it's some of the content is also in the plan. But unfortunately, this is an investment plan mostly. So it was not any money in the public transport, in the national transport plan especially for this, but we had it on the agenda at least. So we used about 15 months to make it, and we also had a small writing group or an editorial group that was also very important to have that. And the process also contained limited hearing to all sorts of institutions in Norway that we thought maybe perhaps had an opinion on this. So we got a lot of inputs from different actors and representatives of institutions and so on. And then we had the help from our secretary to deal with this. It was quite a lot of work, actually. So I think it's very important to have a little editorial group that are continuing to be
with the sort of delivery side of it. You mean they kept going? Were they like then? Did they become a steering group for the document once it got adopted?
We will come to that. That's what we wanted to be that, but we didn't manage really to get. We should have all the working group as a steering group. As we can talk about that later. I think Liv has some opinion on that.
But they were very much part of communicating the document.
Yeah.
So they worked as a team. Yeah.
Also, at the same time, the Norwegian Public Roads Administration developed a bicycle strategy that was also a daughter document to the same national transport plan. But I think maybe that is good, because I think from then on there was more attention to walking as a separate transport mode, and not this walking and bicycle combination.
Yeah, right from the beginning, you had two different documents, didn't you? You never had them combined. You always had them separate. That's quite unusual, but you found that helpful?
I think that helped to establish walking as a transport mode.
Yeah. But I think at the national level we have different strategies, but many on the local level, they combined both walking and bicycling in their plans, not in their strategies, but in their plans.
I was going to ask you about that, because what I see now on the site, and you're very generous with putting all sorts of policy links on your website. There are lots of regional policies now for walking, as well as the national plan. How does that work? And was that immediate? You know, you mentioned that the regions were involved at the beginning of the national document. Did they then automatically go and write their own sort of policy, or how did that come about? And why do you need that regional document as well as the national one?
The national walking strategy has 6 action areas, and one of them is responsibility and about making local walking strategies. We look at the municipalities as key in walking for 2 reasons. They have the planning system in Norway, so they about area planning, how to structure the urban areas, and also most of the streets we walk in would be municipal streets. So it's kind of key to the national walking strategy that to encourage municipalities to make their own walking strategy. And that
so have they all done it now? They've done them all at every region?
No, but it was followed up 2 years later in 2014 to make a guidelines for how to make a walking local walking strategy. And we have, well, we have like 20 walking strategies maybe in Norway, and that's only a small share of all the municipalities. But on the other hand, the 4 largest, several of the larger urban areas have their own walking strategy, and this maybe is about how long time implementation takes, because there are still new municipalities that are now making their own local strategy. We have a 4-year system with the local planning system, so it takes maybe 4 years before they decide to make a walking strategy, and then you have the time to make it.
I see some of those regional plans now go on to 2030 and some 2033, I think, even beyond the Sustainable Development Goals, interestingly. And in fact, your policy ends this year. I mean, it's in theory, it runs out in 2023. So having been around for 9 years, and between the two of you, I guess, you know, we've had that stewardship, that consistency of the stewardship. How do you feel as it's gone? And are you on target with the ambition that you set back in 2012, 2014, when I think it officially started, and you got some baseline data? How do you feel? Liv, you tell it, or Guro, you go on. Guro, you set the targets.
Start, but I think Liv should follow up, because it's okay. I think the walking has come up on the agenda in many places, and all small places in Norway have walking on their agenda, even if they don't give them the highest priority as they should. But they also have it contained in their planning system, but maybe not so many as a special walking strategy. Liv knows a little more about that, I think.
So Liv, how do you think it's going?
As I said, we have 6 action areas, and one of them was responsibility. So as a state agency, we tried to look into what is our responsibility into walking. And so we have gone through, for example, the speed limit criteria, the criteria for having what do you call it, zebra stripe passage, pedestrian crossings, criteria for pedestrian crossings, and yeah, when we have guidelines and things, we try to look at our responsibility in it, and we have been invited into several other state agencies to contribute to their guidelines. But when it comes to the number of local strategies, we are not where we targeted to be.
Mm. But in terms of impact, then let's think about impact, because you talked about 35% and you wanted to get to 50% mode share. You wanted people to be walking 1.5 kilometers. You know, that's quite a lot more than, you know, the average 500 meters. You know, have you managed to sort of push on those sorts of targets? How do you feel that has been?
We present every year a kind of accounting of we gather data that we have and present it, and I would say we have not achieved all those goals or those targets that we set, but at least walking has not been diminished, which it also could have been when you look at the development of the society as a whole, and we found that the targets we have set, the measures are set at an urban level, while the data we have is on a national level, so they don't really. It's difficult to see a high effect of an urban measure on national data.
Yes, I see you've got data. I mean, you published data for 2015, 2016, 2017 on your website. Has it continued? Has it been an annual thing, or did COVID get in the way? Or
it is an annual thing, but it has a different name now, so you probably didn't find it. Yeah. So it's now it was published only for pedestrian data at that time, but then we gather it so it's for like pedestrians and bicycling and shared mobility and so on in the same publication. But it has continued, yes.
Okay, you're collecting quite a lot of data, aren't you, Guro? We lost you there for a second, but welcome back. That's all good. We were just talking about data, really, and I was aware that when you set up the plan originally, you really set some interesting targets. You were going to reach into lots of different parts of your community. You know, we talked about schools, the elderly, a number of people were highlighted. You talked about wanting to change the system for how paths were dealt with in the winter, especially about the snow plowing and the maintenance, trying to change the priority, I think, in the way that streets were looked after. And also, I think quite ambitiously developing networks of paths, you know, particularly around schools, 2 kilometers of networks. You know, we often talk about, especially around public transport, 500 meters, you know, and then some people say that's too much. But 2 kilometer walking path networks around schools in Norway, have these things been easy? I mean, which of these sort of initiatives have been most popular, I guess, and which ones have been hard to actually implement?
There are something we call heart zones around the schools, which I guess is more like the 500 meters that you talk about. That has been a very popular measure. what we call the short short passages. What would you call it,
Yeah, sort
Guro?
passages. Yeah.
Has been a very popular measure that several of the larger urban areas have developed. I think in Trondheim they have developed more than 100, maybe 150 different new roads.
Oh, right.
But the main impact, I think, is that we in Norway, with this same national transport plan from 2014, introduced something we call urban mobility agreements. It's agreements for the 4 largest urban areas that they would have financial support from the state to do transport investments. If they had policies for structuring the urban area and policies for mobility, so that private car traffic should not grow from a certain baseline. And so they are measured every year if they are following their policy, or if they are succeeding with their policy. And so to not have the private car traffic to grow, you have to invest in your in public transport, in bicycling, and in walking.
Interesting. I heard that in Oslo. I mean, they've become famous not only for the fact that they hit Vision Zero. They didn't actually have anyone die, not even a single pedestrian, for I think 2 years in a row now, which is extraordinary. But it does demonstrate it can be done. But their 3 policies, as I understood it, were investing in no more cars, good clean public transport, and walkability. That seemed to be their 1, 2, 3. It's clearly worked for them. And what you're saying is that there was money for these, for the big cities to actually invest in that. When you started, Guro, you were saying there wasn't any money. You had all this good policy, but no budget. So when did the money come, and how easy was it to find that money?
The money is not directly connected to the walking strategy document, but it's connected to this urban agreement, urban mobility agreement, and also something we call urban mobility packages, which is for smaller urban areas. So what is really lacking in the Norwegian policy at the moment is the smaller. Even smaller urban areas, the villages and the small towns, and they are complaining about it. There should be something for them as well. Then there are some very small support schemes that they can actually ask for money.
But what we tried to do in the beginning was that it should be a precondition of having these packages that they made a local walking strategy. But unfortunately, we didn't go through. We didn't go through. But that would be a support also. And I just want to comment on this heart tone which we have around schools. And some people say that we use all our money and our effort for children, but it's a lot of other people also that needs to walk. And we did in Viken County, we did a study of how many people, how many workplaces, how many public supportive places that were in these zones. And it happens to be in this county, it was about 80% of people living within this area. So it is to give priority to children. You also give priority to the rest of the society, I think also.
Yeah, very interesting. I heard that in Gdansk as well, actually. They've targeted schools, and they did the 500 meters around schools. And like you were saying, they covered 80% of their city, just with one walking policy, just for children. But they found that extraordinary too. So that's been working as a formula. And how much sort of money is available then, Liv, when you talk about these agreements? What sort of money are people getting for for walking specifically?
I'm not able to sum it up. It's a part of each agreement, specific for each urban area.
But sort of people are willing to spend millions on walking, would you say, or thousands at least?
I think they, especially Trondheim, has been done a lot of work with short paths.
And Bergen, yes.
And Bergen also. And they have done also economic calculations of how much how worth these paths are, and it is enormous. It is the most what you call lønnsom liv, profitable investment in road infrastructure, actually.
But I think Trondheim was one of the early areas to concentrate on walking, and they decided to do something that they could do in a very short term that shows visible results for the inhabitants, and that was a success. So they have continued, but of course they don't do only this. They have other measures as well.
Yeah, and the politicians then, have they stayed with you? I mean, you talked about engaging them early on in getting that decision to have a policy. Do they keep in touch? Do you sort of report regularly about sort of update on the document? I mean, we're about to hit the 2023 sort of end point of the policy. Are the politicians saying we want another one, or are you campaigning to say we need to refresh it? You know, what's the mood politically at the moment?
I think this is one of the lessons learned, that we should have been more working more on that part on a national level.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's helpful that they do that there are new local walking strategies around the country every year, so that locally people are maybe more engaged than on a national level. But and maybe actually on a national level, there are other initiatives that helps us. Like 2 years ago, there was a renewal on this age-friendly urban development was, and so we can raise our voice and add to those initiatives. And there was
all these other policies are catching up, aren't they?
Yeah.
I saw that there's a physical activity action plan now, I think, as well, following on from the WHO Global Action Plan for Physical Activity. I think that came out in 2020. Are you sort of connecting into these documents then and sort of adding your influence into these other policies?
Yes, we do. And we are all often invited in.
And some of these people making these strategies, they were participating in the making of the national walk strategy. I just wanted to give a comment on this making goals, because that was a quite interesting discussion in this group, because it is of course very dangerous to put up targets. We are difficult to fulfill them, but the discussion was whether we have realistic goals, or should we have goals that really reached far up and were very ambitious.
Ambitious.
So that was a very interesting discussion we had, and I think we landed on a mixture of that, but it is now used to have too ambitious goals, because then you get so disappointed, and you said we don't really have to work for it either. But to have it realistic, it was very interesting, and it's an important discussion, I think.
So good to have targets all the same. Would you have the same targets now, or would you do it differently? I mean, let's imagine that you are going to do a new strategy. Let's hope so. Liv, I mean, this is your role now, isn't it? I mean, just confirm to us, what is your job title? Is it the walking manager, or how does it work?
It's not in my title at all.
Really?
I work with charging infrastructure as well as I work with walking.
But I think
Okay.
that's the problem within this area, that the people who have the initiative, they are filled with other things to do because they are good workers, and then sometimes it's difficult to sort it out what to prioritize in your work.
But that's also a lesson learned, that we would like to have that working committee as a steering committee following up the strategy, because the Norwegian Public Roads Administration that I'm a part of has been rearranged and has different scope now than we had in 2012, and so has some of the partners that we cooperated with. And so you need something that is stable and that can push it further and remind the different agencies that we have this responsibility. But I can add
Yes,
that we just renewed our traffic safety action plan.
okay.
And in that, it is now a task for the regions to work for local walking strategies in the municipalities in their region. So that's one way that the document can be alive a bit longer. And the traffic safety action plan is also important, but because we see that when we now have more people walking and riding the bikes in the urban areas, there is also more accidents with bikes and pedestrians in the urban areas. Or we have to look very closely at what measures we use to avoid that.
I noticed when you started, you were wanting to change the rules, influence the handbooks, change the traffic regulations. That there was influencing traffic transport plans. A lot of the strategies actions were targeting influence, weren't they? They were raising awareness and influencing other areas. And we've heard this several times. We heard that in Austria, and we've heard that in the Netherlands recently as well. Something very similar, and also in Scotland. They've shared with us the fact that the most that they could do was actually agree who they were trying to influence, to actually change the sort of fabric, I guess, of how the countries run and how rules are made, and how, to use your words, Guro, the life of the citizens is managed and provided for. It's a bit of a boring task, maybe, writing rules and regulations and influencing these documents. Has that been successful? I mean, do you feel as though you've managed to infiltrate those documents, and things generally have become more pedestrian friendly, at least in these other document policies? What do you feel?
Well, as a responsibility was one of the action areas, and we feel that this is a responsibility for us as a state agency, that we make these frames that the municipalities work within. So we wanted to make sure that the policies we give is the right one for pedestrians, so that at least is okay. So we are not the barriers for the municipalities to make lively streets. Whether we have succeeded or not, but we have. It's better than it was, and I think there was an energy to do this the first 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But I think now that we have been one around, maybe we need something to renew the process.
Okay,
we
a bit
need
more energy.
It's like a planning process. You have to renew the attention every 4 or 5 years or so, or it kind of, the energy kind of goes down.
So maybe a 5-year plan is better than a 10-year plan. Would that be sort of keep the energy going?
Maybe yes, we should have put something in it that renewed it for every national transport plan. It could be good to have a kind of repeating and renewing every 4 years.
Interesting.
Yes.
And Guro, what about you? What do you think about that now? Then, I mean, you're an editor now. You have the chance to. You have a voice, don't you, in public areas to be able to have an opinion about these things. You're not in the roads department anymore.
No.
Is that useful?
It is useful. We have this website that we have a lot of measurements for making more environmental friendly areas and so on. Of course, walking is an important part, and we have different measures for making or putting the pedestrians higher up on the agenda. And I think one very important role that the public road administration can have is to rule by knowledge. It's that they do a lot of research and spread the good word and do influence in that way, not only by rules and regulations. That is also very important, but also to be sure that the municipality people knows what is best and what is not functioning, and what have they tried at other places, and to get the knowledge across the country. I think that is a very important role that the Norwegian at the national level have, and also of course the regional level. They come also closer up to these municipalities. So it's a lot of actors that are important, but on the top level, it is maybe spreading the good word and the knowledge, and to find new knowledge within research. I think that's very important.
I noticed that actually on the website, that you also highlight where people have done a master's thesis, and you actually published the thesis on the government website, and also quite a lot of literature, Norwegian literature reviews and information that might be helpful background to people who are trying to make, as you say, their own policies at whatever level. And I like the fact that you've been generous with those links, and not judgmental about whether someone's got the best policy ever. But you're that knowledge center, aren't you? I like the way that you take that role on.
I wanted to put out different kinds of literature because it can be inspirational. My agency has a different role now than it did in 2012. We could work more closely directly to the municipalities and the urban areas in 2012. So now we have a network with the regions for walking and bicycling. So we meet regularly every 3 weeks or something to communicate different subjects concerning walking and bicycling. And so then the regions then will communicate with their municipalities. So now it's a more two-step communication than it used to be.
So it's a flow and exchange of information.
Yeah.
And is that attached to money then? Is it all about money, or is it about knowledge? What are you thinking?
It's more like supporting the professionals in the regions in their communication to the municipalities. And then we have a regular information, I don't know, a kind of a Teams meeting for everyone to join about mobility on a regular basis.
How many people come to that then? How many people is that would come together?
I think there are many people that attend these regular meetings. And then every once a year, we have a walking seminar. It used to be physical in the beginning in Oslo, and then there will be like 70 to 100 people, many municipalities, some regions, some consultants, some ministries. And then because of the pandemic, we started to have them in a digital way, and then it reached like 200 or 300 persons each time.
Wow.
And we see, so there are more people, and we see that other parts of the country attend now. So all the parts of the country attend.
That's really good. So actually, that's a positive thing from the pandemic, that you're really reaching out now. You're having more influence on that delivery. I think you're really focusing on delivery now, aren't you? And the exchange of data, I guess.
And I think also the pandemic has made, within the pandemic, we walked more in our neighborhoods. We didn't bicycle very much more, but we walked more. So that, but it will be interesting to see the travel survey now in 23, whether we are back to where we were, or if we had managed to hold on the walking initiatives we had in our neighborhood.
Right. We're almost out of time. I can't believe how quickly this has flown, but I really want to thank you for the amount of knowledge you've shared with us. It's really interesting to hear the story from Norway. You've given us a lot of insights already about, maybe 5 years, not 10 years, having these regional networks of professionals and how useful that is, and now it being online, how much reach that's helped with you. You've talked about changing policies, or influencing policies with this strategy, and you've had some really helpful, good successes with some real visible initiatives, I think, that must be very rewarding to see these heart zones, the short passages, as you've mentioned. This all sounds very positive. Imagine you're one of the countries who haven't started yet, and they need to start again, and you're about to start again. Let's hope you start again with a new document. What would your advice be to start? Is it still that you bring together that network group? I think you called them originally, what were they? A working group, and then they became what you hope to be a committee, a steering committee. Is that still the best way to start?
I think the multidisciplinary working group was a very, very good idea. To look at walking from so many different aspects, the different aspects of walking and the different situations. I think that's important. I don't think you had any researchers in that group.
Myself.
Because I was at that time a researcher on walking.
You were a researcher then, and now there's quite a few researchers. We have Helgi there, definitely at TNO, and several others. They're doing the Walk More project. We know in Norway it seems to be very successful. There's a lot happening, isn't there, actually? And you talk about Berge. You mentioned that they're working there. They're involved in an Interreg project that we're connected to, Active Cities. They seem to be sort of an external sort of embrace, I guess, of a wider group. Would you say that that's what's happening? Is Norway still looking inward, or is it also looking outward? What's your feeling?
Has always been looking outward for inspiration, I think.
But I think it's if we start working with this again, I would of course broaden out the actors in this walking group. Maybe more people from the municipalities and counties. We were only 3 people from that region or that level, and also maybe more. We had the Ministry of Health with us, but we didn't have the Ministry of Environment and what we call the local government and regional development ministry. And we might also, it may be useful to have the private sector with us, because they are very often the people we are fighting with. It's the contractors.
Developers, you mean? Developers?
Yeah, developers, for instance. And also, as we see maybe you talked about that when I was a little away, but in the city center where they have the pedestrian areas, it is very often conflicts between delivery of goods, walking, and these electric scooters, for instance. So we should have more people thinking that we should have more people that are not agreeing with us in this group to also incorporate their interest. I think that is might be interesting and useful.
Yeah,
And
so the
when
agenda is very much evolving, isn't it? You mentioned scooters and the use of the environment group. I mean, is climate change a big factor in Norway? Is that a motivation to sort
of
of?
course,
Is there a
oh
sense
yes,
of urgency? And is walking seen as a solution in the climate
the
conversation?
the climate conversation is very much behind these urban mobility agreements.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Mm.
very
Then
good. Anything else you want to tell us before we wrap up? Anything that you feel you must say? Don't ever do it like this, or don't forget to speak to the politician once a month, or whatever. What do you think?
we should have been lobbying the politicians more, I think, because there are so many good aspects that goes together with walking, so that you can kind of it's part of every good policy almost.
Yeah.
Then as a winter country, we have had a research program about the maintenance for winter maintenance for pedestrians and for bicyclists, and so we have learned some more there and distribute and communicated to other actors.
I think that the winter is a big problem for walking in Norway, and we have people, old people that are almost not out. They're almost sitting inside all the time. So that's a big problem for well.
And would you say that the communities come with you then? Would you say that they've seen the benefits, or they appreciate this investment in walking? Do you feel the communities been alongside all the way?
What did you say? I think the big challenge is all the car users, and they have a big interest, and the politicians are really listening to their problems, and they also have a good lobby organization for them, as the bicyclists also have. In Norway, we are a little late in blooming in a walking association, but we have started that. It has been started now, and we hope they will also be a very important actors to cooperate with. Because
interesting. That's good to hear. Yeah.
The national authority needs somebody pushing,
Okay, so maybe that's the community voice is the place to push. I know we've got people from Austria. That community voice, Dieter, is on here, and Martina. I know that's what they do in pushing the Austrian government. It certainly has its role. It's not always a comfortable one, I guess, but they work. They find a synergy, I think. Would you agree, Liv? Is that's what's needed to help you?
I guess yes.
I'm worried you've been the first in the world to have a policy, and now it's just running out. It's running out this year, so we really need to make sure that you've got this new document, and let's think about how we could help that. And as you say, I like the fact that you're thinking externally, taking inspiration from other places, and we know lots of countries are not only have caught up with you and have written documents now. We think about half the world has got a policy of some shape, which is amazing, but actually a number of them are still being written. So look, we're out of time, but I just wanted to thank you once more, Guro Berge, who started the national walking policy for walking internationally, I think. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your experiences with us, and Liv Ovstedal from the Roads Authority now in Norway, who's taken on that role of keeping it going, making sure that this policy is as effective as it can be. Thank you so much for your time today, sharing with us your thoughts. And we'll write this up. We'll have a sort of summary note about it. I'm quite sure it will inspire lots of people. And we will also put in links to your website where you've got so much information, your national document as well as the regional ones, the MSc papers that we've talked about, the literature reviews. I think you're very generous with wanting to not just create knowledge but share it. I'm sure that's part of your success. If there's anyone got any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I think we'll close this session. And thank you again very much for your time today.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Thanks again. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.